What's up guys, so I'm here, I'm going to be doing my own breakdown I guess, so sort of discussing what's going on in this new Star Wars The Force Awakens trailer. So let's hop right into it. Alright, so jumping straight into the trailer, and our first actual scene we see is of Rey in her scavenger gear. She's got her whole hat on, her like turban sort of thing with the glasses and everything. And what's really cool to notice about this scene is that the glasses that she's actually wearing, the sand goggles, the lenses are actually from a old stormtrooper helmet. You can see the sort of like same similarities, and it sort of makes sense that she would have that since, you know, she's on Jakku and there's all these sort of imperial remnants of like star destroyers and crashed ships and everything. So she was bound to discover like maybe an armory or something. It has some like old helmets on it, and she's just jury rigged this like mask sort of thing. So actually really cool. So on to the next scene, which is of her descending through this star destroyer into the hangar bay, which I guess it is her hangar bay because you got the lifts in the floor like you see in the other star destroyers throughout the original trilogy and sometimes the prequel trilogy. And what's really cool to see is it's kind of hard to see. I had to sort of brighten the image up a little bit, but in the foreground there is a wreckage of a Lambda class shuttle, which is the sort of tri-winged shuttle that the Empire uses for like the Emperor and Darth Vader, and then Luke escapes in one at the end of Return of the Jedi. So that's like a nice little cool detail. There's also like TIE fighter wings and stuff just spewing all over the hangar bay, which is really cool. So this next scene is just a simple scene of Rey and BB-8 walking through the desert. Now for people who don't know, there's been some rumors flying around that BB-8 is actually Poe Dameron's robot, astromech droid for his X-Wing, and sort of makes sense as well since he actually fits in there. And the whole thing is that Poe is on a diplomatic mission for the Resistance, and something goes awry, and he ends up being captured by the First Order or the Imperials, and they go after him on Jakku, and BB-8 manages to escape and then is captured by Rey, and then that's how they sort of all meet and everything. So very original trilogy-esque. But yeah, pretty cool, and I really like that BB-8 is an actual practical effect. It gives the actors something to actually react to and look at, and not, you know, just like a green dot on the screen or anything. That's really cool. Following on from the Jakku, BB-8 and Rey scene, we actually get another Rey scene with her sort of longingly looking at a ship leaving the planet. Obviously she wants to leave the planet, or is, you know, wants to venture out somewhere, and kind of reminds me of Luke, you know, in A New Hope, how he wanted to, you know, join the Imperial Academy and just get off, you know, Tatooine. So it's kind of cool that they've got that sort of parallel and everything. But what I really wanted to focus on was the scene just before that with the ship. In the foreground you can see some type of structure. Now that is actually the foot of an AT-AT, an all-terrain armored transport from the days of the Empire, and we know that Rey is actually living in one of them. There's like one that's toppled on its side, and she's built like this little house and hangar for a speeder in it. So that's really cool that there's all these remnants around the planet, and I guess around the universe, that people are sort of recycling and reusing. I think that's really cool. Next we see the First Order sort of assembling in a real sort of Nazi type style, and you can't really hear what they're saying, but there is sort of like this staticky audio underneath that really reminds me of like one of the old World War II documentaries you'd see where they'd have like a Hitler speech or something, and it's kind of got that sound to it, like that old-timey radio sort of thing. So they're really playing up the whole Nazi sort of thing. And, you know, there's the big red with a black symbol on it, which is kind of like how the Nazi symbol was and everything. And, you know, the uniforms are always, the Imperial and the First Order uniforms all look very, very Nazi-ish. It's also good to notice that this is actually taking place in Starkiller Base, Starkiller being the planet thing that we saw in the poster that sort of is like, I guess, the new Death Star, which I'll get to talking about a little later on. But yeah, really liking the look of these new Stormtroopers and the First Order. After that we have Finn here looking very distressed. The whole story with Finn's kind of weird. You know, we know he's a Stormtrooper, and by the sounds of it, he doesn't particularly want to be one, or he's sort of kind of like forced into it, like this is the only life he's really known. And what we've heard from like rumors and like set like footage and pictures and stuff that we've seen is that he sort of is a deserter from the First Order, and they're sort of sent after him. This all comes from him raiding the Jakku village with Captain Phasma and her sort of platoon, and him not wanting to kill some civilian. Phasma sort of like asks for his weapon and everything, and his friend I think gets killed like instead of him, like as sort of like a show of like force, like if you stuff up, this is what's going to happen if you don't stay in line with the First Order sort of thing. So he sort of ditches the First Order and like goes out on his own or something. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we see a little bit of more footage of him later on Jakku. Coming up next, we have this TIE fighter that's sort of falling towards Jakku. And the one thing I really liked about this scene is if you actually look at Jakku, and it's got kind of like the blue outline, which is the atmosphere, and I really like that because that reminds me of the original trilogy. The original trilogy had that on a lot of its planets, like the lot of blue hue sort of thing. I know it was on Tatooine in A New Hope when you first saw Tatooine after the scroll and everything, so that's really cool, really nice callback, and kind of like, something logical, since that's sort of like what happens when you see it from out of space. But this new TIE fighter is interesting because it actually has 2 seats in it, and one seat controls the front and like pilots, while the other one controls a gun on the back, so protecting from the rear as well, since a lot of the TIE fighters you saw in the original trilogy got like shot from behind and everything, so they're sort of thinking now. But this TIE is apparently Finn and Poe's. What happens is Finn apparently, he wants to leave the First Order, and the way to do that is to get Poe, and Poe obviously knows where his ship is, like how to get him away from the First Order maybe, so he pretends to kidnap Poe, and like they both escape and they crash land on Jakku and sort of are split up. So this next scene is really interesting. We see Finn standing on top of a dune overlooking a small settlement type thing, and what's really cool about the settlement is this is the settlement we've seen in set photos and official photos and leaked photos and stuff, and you can tell because right in the middle of the city is the structure that we saw in some of the leaked photos, the kind of weird like 2-pronged structure. Like I'll show a picture of it, but that's actually a callback to some old Ralph McQuarrie art that he did for, I think it was Return of the Jedi, for Jabba's palace. So it's really cool that they're actually going back and reusing a lot of his old art, since he was the guy who basically designed Star Wars. Like everything you see, he had a hand in it. The X-Wings, Darth Vader's look, the lightsaber, stuff like that. He had a hand in creating the initial designs for. So that's really cool that they're going back to that sort of stuff and using his old designs or unused designs that didn't get used as this new sort of generation. Finn is also carrying a jacket which many believe, and me as well believe, that it is actually Poe's. We know this because we actually see Poe in the, I think it was the Comic-Con video, the sort of little making of they did for the San Diego Comic-Con. We see Finn taking Poe hostage, like through, I guess, a ship to like a cell or like a brig or something, and he's actually wearing that jacket. So he's probably taken it out of the crashed TIE fighter that we saw earlier, and he thinks Poe's dead, so he's just taken it as like sort of cover for like the harsh desert or something. So up next we have Kylo Ren on the bridge of, I guess, his Star Destroyer, the Finalizer. I guess it's the Star Destroyer because it's the same triangular window shape we've seen in the original trilogy, and there's some sort of red type of laser light sort of thing happening, and we don't exactly know what it is. They could be testing the Starkiller Base weapon, or they could be testing a weapon on the Finalizer or something. We don't really, not too sure, but when we continue along we see that he's talking to the Darth Vader mask, or that's how it's actually edited. I don't think he's actually talking to the Darth Vader mask, but he's talking about how he's going to finish what Vader started. I'm guessing Vader because that's how the edit makes it look, which is interesting since we don't really know a lot about Kylo Ren, but we do know that he is a Vader fanboy. He's collecting all these Vader artifacts. He's got like Vader's helmet, which he would have had to have gone to Endor to, I guess, dig up or like find, which is kind of creepy. And he wants Luke's lightsaber, Luke and Anakin's old lightsaber, which we see later on, the blue lightsaber. He wants that obviously because of its history with Anakin and Darth Vader, killed a bunch of Jedi, it's been around the block and everything, so he's kind of a bit crazy for this. He's also part of the Knights of Ren, which we don't really know who they are. We see them a little later in the trailer, so I'll talk a little bit more about them there, but they're this weird, I guess, cult sort of thing that maybe might be following Vader or something. So it's going to be really interesting to see as more of this comes out prior to the movie and after the movie. So I'm really excited to see how they develop the Knights of Ren and Kylo Ren. Next we get more Kylo Ren, and this time he seems to be torturing poor Poe Dameron using the Force maybe or something, since the look on Poe Dameron's face isn't exactly one of, pleasure or like happiness. It's kind of in pain. As we said in our full breakdown, we think that maybe Kylo Ren maybe doesn't have the Force and he's using stuff that sort of emulates the Force. That could be the thing. He could be using the Force to sort of torture Poe somewhere, or they could be using the old Imperial tactic and tying them to a chair and using that torture device that we saw in Empire Strikes Back that Han was tied to when Vader was trying to torture Luke's whereabouts out of him. Also could be something similar to like a interrogation droid that we saw in A New Hope that was interrogating Princess Leia or something, and don't really know what's going on here. He's obviously looking for something in Poe. He might be trying to read Poe's mind, like doing like a Jedi mind trick or something on him, and Poe's like fighting back with his mind or something. We really don't particularly know, and it again goes with editing and everything. We don't know what exactly is happening in this scene, but it looks like a really intense scene. So this next scene is kind of interesting. It's a really quick scene just between these two big money shot scenes where we see like a forest burning and sort of being blown apart. Now my theory is, I actually have two theories in this. The first one is this is actually on Starkiller Base, and we know Starkiller Base is technically a planet, so this is what happens when I guess the planet opens to reveal like the super weapon, like the big long trenches like obliterate like life and the forests and stuff that are built on top of it. My other theory is that this is actually Maz Kanata's castle that we see later on in the trailer, and this is like part of it being blown up, like the forest part that was sitting next to it. So it could be either or, which is really cool to think about. Like, the amount of possibilities in this movie are amazing, of like what scenes could be where, and everything is just really cool to think about. Up next we have one of the many money shots that are in this trailer. We see the Millennium Falcon dodging a bunch of First Order ties through the wreckage of a Star Destroyer on Jakku. And what's really cool is we see it, flying through all this stuff, and there's actually one scene where I think it gets too close to a bit of scrap and you see like sparks and stuff come out of the bottom of the Falcon, so it's like scraping against the side. I really like little details like that. That's really cool. And while we've been seeing the Falcon escaping these TIE fighters, we hear Rey ask Han about these legends of the past and everything, and he basically says that everything she's heard about Jedi, the dark side, the Sith, everything, they're all true. And I really like that on a couple of reasons. The first being that I love that everything that they did during like the original trilogy, during the Galactic Civil War, I like that that's sort of become like the thing of legend. Like, did it happen? Didn't it? It was so long ago, we're not really too sure. And it also plays into the fact that the Empire or the First Order, they would want to cover something like that up, since this little rebel force defeated this massive empire. Like, that's really embarrassing, and you've got to sort of portray like the Empire as like this big sort of thing, and they can't have some little group of people running around destroying everything. So they've sort of, I guess, forcefully sort of denied everything and made people think that it's just legend and everything. And I like that Han's like, no, it's real. And that's another really cool thing about Han, is just shows you how far his character has come along, since you see him first in A New Hope. When we meet him, he's criminal. He's essentially a drug runner. He runs spice and stuff and smuggles people and stuff, and he's arrogant and kind of cynical. And there's the scene where in A New Hope, that he's like talking about like hokey religions, and he doesn't believe in any of that sort of stuff, even though he's sort of seeing it and everything. And it just shows to show that in the 35 plus years between A New Hope and this film, he's seen all this stuff and he's sort of changed his perspective, and he's like, no, this is all real. Like, it's totally real. I've seen all this stuff happen, which is absolutely fantastic character progression. I really love that. Another really cool thing to talk about is when he's talking to Rey and Finn, there's some sort of holographic map in front or between both of them. They're obviously looking for a planet, or this could be like the Falcon's sort of data bank where they can like search for like planets to go to and stuff like that, which is really cool. We get to see all this really cool stuff we haven't seen in the Falcon yet, which is really cool. Here in another interesting shot, we see the Falcon going to hyperspace, and what's really cool is they actually kept the whole hyperspace wormhole thing that we first saw in A New Hope Hope, and then I think it was in like Clone Wars and Rebels. So it's cool it's coming back as well. And J.J. Abrams did something similar in Star Trek with the warp speed there, so it's a really cool sort of parallel there. But I'm really glad they're sort of bringing back this whole wormhole sort of thing. It looks really cool. Alright, so this is one of the biggest scenes and one of the most talked about scenes I've seen all over the internet recently. This is the Knights of Ren. This is the 7 Knights of Ren, and they appear to be on a battlefield in the rain somewhere. We've got Kylo Ren out the front. Now, my theory is that when you first see the scene in the wide shot, it looks like he's in a ditch or digging something up, and we know he is a collector of Darth Vader sort of goods, so could this be Endor and they've just butchered a bunch of Ewoks or people that are living on the planet now and gone there to sort of dig up Vader's armor and corpse? So yeah, it really... could be anything really. It could be part of the movie, and like near the end, maybe the Knights of Ren come and help in a fight or something. But at this point, we really don't know. But I like to think that it is them going after Vader's stuff in maybe like a flashback or something, or like some type of force vision or something. Really interesting, and they all look really cool. And what's really cool to notice about it is that Kylo is the only one with a lightsaber. The rest have like blasters. There's a guy in the back with a pike, and there's one in the back as well that looks like he's got like a big sword or something. So it's going to be really interesting to see more of these characters, and I hope they actually get some screen time and everything, like get in some fights and stuff. They all look really interesting. They all have different costumes. They all look really, really cool. The next thing we see is of these X-Wings flying over some water. We don't know whether this is Poe Dameron's squadron, which is called Black Squadron, I believe. But these X-Wings are the T-70 X-Wings. They're not the T-65s. T-65s were the ones from the original trilogy that we saw Luke and Wedge and all them fly. So these ones are sort of like the upgraded version, and they're actually really, really similar to Ralph McQuarrie's original X-Wing art, with the curved sort of ends on where the laser cannons are and everything, and how the wings open up. Really similar, and they obviously take the new BB-8 astromech droid, since we've seen toys and stuff of Poe Dameron's X-Wing with BB-8 in the astromech droid socket. So that's really cool. I'm really excited to see more of these new X-Wings and more of new ships that we've seen. We've seen some leaked concept art of all these different ships like A-Wings, E-Wings, B-Wings. All these ships, new and old, are coming back, and they all look really cool. I can't wait to see them. So next thing we see the X-Wings in the distance coming towards some stormtroopers in some blown out type of building. My guess is that this is Maz Kanata's castle, like a little hideout, and the Imperials have tracked Han and Rey and all that there, and the X-Wings are there coming to sort of like aid them and pick them up and return them back to the Resistance base. And really cool, like the little dogfights that you see happening look really cool. The effects look fantastic, like the water effects when the TIE fighter like swoops in behind them near the water. Looks really cool. Can't wait to actually see this in motion on the big screen in IMAX 3D. So this next scene, I think it takes place after Finn and Han have all been rescued from Maz's castle. They're all like regrouping back at the Resistance base, which apparently is called codenamed Pirate Cove, or at least in the production side of things, when like a bunch of production stuff leaked, it was called Pirate Cove. So they probably won't transfer that, but it'll be called something. We don't exactly know what it's going to be called. But if you actually look in the background, you can see a droid called PZ4C0, and this is a droid that we've actually seen in like toys. I think the droids actually had a bunch of toys made out of her, and she was in the young adult Princess Leia book, which is called Moving Target, which is a really good one as well. And she's sort of like Princess Leia's sort of assistant, and sort of helps her with like the day-to-day operations of the Resistance. So there's a nice little background character like moving through there. And as the scene goes on, we actually see more stuff like the Millennium Falcon and stuff in the background, so that's really cool. And I remember seeing when this was being shot, and they actually built like a full-size Falcon, and they had like full-size vehicles as well, like cardboard cutouts and stuff like that, so that was really cool to see. Up next we have some X-Wings chasing some TIE fighters over what I guess is Maz Kanata's castle, which has been completely blown up. This looks amazing. I can't wait to actually see this on the big screen, like seeing the TIE actually get shot, just like fall apart and just explode and everything. It looks so good, and I can't wait to actually see the space battles either. So far we've only seen in atmosphere on planet battles, so it'd be cool to see if there is actually any space battles. And here we have Rey, Finn and BB-8 running towards something and then a TIE fighter coming into shot and just blowing it up. Now my theory is that this thing that they're running towards is actually Rey's speeder transport sort of thing that she uses to get around on Jakku, the bigger version of the one that we've seen in the other trailer. We've seen this other one that's been in trailers, it's like 4 engines and like a little cockpit, so maybe she was like running towards that, or it could have been like a ship that was docked and they're like running towards a ship, like any ship they can get to that would work, that they could escape the Empire with, and maybe they actually end up like running towards the Millennium Falcon and managing to get on board that and flying away, and that leads to the whole Jakku chase that we've seen so much of in these trailers. But what's really cool about this is that this was actually a practical explosion. We actually saw them film it in the, I think it was the Comic-Con video. We saw this big explosion, so that's really cool that they're doing all these practical explosions. Whereas in the prequels they did do practical explosions, but not a lot. A lot of it was faked and like CGI'd, and you could tell. And like this one, you can definitely tell it's real, and it looks really great. Alright, so this next scene is quite full of Easter eggs, and I'll get to them in a moment, but I just want to talk about what's going on in this scene. So we see Han and Rey, BB-8 and Finn walking into what appears to be Maz Kanata's castle, the opening, and we've got this great practical effect droid here, this big red droid. It looks absolutely fantastic. What I really like is that BB-8 is actually swiveling his head to like look up at the droid, which is really cool. But so yeah, the Easter eggs. So these flags up here, there's a few in there that are actually referencing some stuff. They're just Easter eggs. That doesn't mean obviously that like because one's there that particular character is there, you know, it's just Easter eggs. The first one being the Mandalorian symbol, which is directly in the middle, right above Han, right in the middle of the flags. It's like the skull with the horns and everything. It's seen on Boba Fett's armor and stuff. It's the Mandalorian symbol. It's obviously not his symbol because he's not a Mandalorian. Yeah, that's pretty cool that that's there. It's a nice little touch and everything. The next one is on the left, and it's kind of hard to see. I had to zoom in and sort of look at it, but it's a bunch of like blue sort of crosses and everything, and that pattern actually matches the pattern that Anakin Skywalker had on his pod racing flag when C-3PO walked it out in front of all the pods before the pod racing started in episode 1. So it's a nice little callback there. That's pretty cool. The next one is on the right side, and it's this big black sort of blob you can see, and I had to get a really good 1080p copy of the picture just to see it, and the flag is of Hondo Ohnaka's gang. It's really cool to actually see them actually bring something from the animated Clone Wars and Rebels TV series and put it in the movies. And I wonder if that was sort of like intentional, whether like an artist did that or if it was done in like post-production or something, but that's really cool. I really like that. Then directly next to that one, a little further up above the red droid, is actually Sebulba's pod racing flag. So as you've got Anakin's and Sebulba's, which is really cool. And keeping with the whole pod racing aesthetic, we've got a blue one on the far left side. It's got like some weird squiggly yellow pattern on it that actually belongs to, I think it's Ark-Roos or Eldar Bedo, another pod racer that was just in episode 1, and there's another one just below that one which belongs to either Ark-Roos or Eldar Bedo. I'm not sure which one was which, but they both belong to one or the other, which is really cool. They got all these different pod racing flags, and it makes me think that this is sort of like something they collect on this world, or like maybe Maz like supports pod racing and these are all different flags she's like collected over the years or something. That's really cool. And the last one is just above Finn. You can't really see it properly because it's sort of waving in the wind, but I was able to actually get a good look at it, and it's actually Zero the Hutt's, I think, World Devourer tattoo. He actually has this tattooed all over his stomach of, he was a Hutt that was in the Clone Wars movie. He was a big part of the Clone Wars movie, and he was in the Clone Wars TV series a couple of times here and there. So again, they're bringing stuff in from the canon cartoons in, which is really neat, and I hope it does like vice versa as well. So that's really neat. I really like that. And another really cool thing is that if you look at the door above Han and then compare it to the Captain Phasma picture that got released a while back with her standing in some rubble, they actually match. So it sort of matches with the whole Maz Kanata's castle actually gets attacked and everything. So that's a neat little bit of like continuity. So in this next shot we see Kylo Ren's command ship landing on Jakku as his stormtroopers, I guess, raid this village, and the whole plot sort of thing, I guess, revolves around them looking for the lightsaber or looking for Poe, who knows where the lightsaber is or something, because we know Poe is in the vicinity, he's on Jakku, and they sort of come after him and they're looking for something, and they think this village village might know where it is, so that's why they're there, and I guess they're going to butcher their entire village. They're already burning the village and everything. Yeah, I guess they're just going to destroy it, just looking for either the lightsaber or Poe or BB-8 or something. We're not entirely too sure exactly what they're looking for, but we know they do burn this whole city, and this is sort of the thing that causes Finn to sort of start questioning the First Order and start sort of having his doubts, and eventually he'll leave the First Order. Next up, we get a great shot of Captain Phasma. We actually haven't heard her talk in these trailers. We've seen her talk through like toys like the voice changer, I think, and there's like a figurine that actually talks when you press a button and everything. But we actually haven't heard her talk in trailers and everything, which has actually been kind of cool. Like they're sort of saving her, Luke, Snoke, and all these other characters just to sort of, I guess, closer to the movie, or they don't want something spoiled or anything. But she looks absolutely badass. This next scene seems to have the internet quite, coming up with all these different rumors and theories and everything. But we see Rey, and she seems visibly distressed. She's crying over what appears to be someone's body. We're not exactly sure whose body. It could be anyone's. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it might be Finn, mainly because if you look in the background, there's the woods and everything where he was actually having the fight with Kylo Ren. So maybe Kylo sort of like wounds him or knocks him out or something, and Rey comes and sort of help defends him or something. Another really cool theory I've heard is that it might actually be Chewbacca, and the reason for that is that if you look in the foreground at the thing she's crying over, there's like, I guess you could say fur maybe, and the thing closest to her face kind of looks like his satchel that he carries around on his hip. So it could be either or. That could even be like Finn's leather jacket. We don't know. That's the thing, and it's plaguing the internet with all these rumors and theories and stuff, and it's been great. But then there's like the silly ones where I say, oh, it's Luke on the ground or something. But yeah, it's really intriguing, and they probably put that shot in the trailer deliberately so this would happen, and it could really be anyone, and it could be a bad guy. We don't know. And that's the thing. We're gonna have to find out when it comes, December 18. Next up, we have Han, Finn, and Chewie seem to be like putting their hands up and surrender, and then suddenly something happens which makes them all look up into the sky. I'm guessing the X-Wings arrive to sort of rescue them from the stormtroopers that have destroyed Maz Kanata's castle. So yeah, it's a pretty cool scene. They obviously didn't expect, the cavalry to arrive. Here we have BB-8 sitting in the back of Poe's X-Wing, his black X-Wing. I think he has two in this movie, like just a normal coloured one, and then like this jet black and orange version that he uses, I think, when he's Black Squadron leader. And they appear to be on the Starkiller Base, around the Starkiller Base, being chased by TIEs. And what's really cool is that you can see this big trench opening, or like it's splitting open. And my theory here is that the planet is actually a planet, but like it's got the weapon inside, and then to activate it, the planet sort of splits in the middle, sort of like how the Death Star had a trench around it, and then the weapon deploys from in there. And in the background, you can see up on the mountain, there's some sort of facility. So my guess is that is like the Starkiller Base where the weapon is ran from. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. It'd be cool if they have like another trench run. That'd be really cool. Now in this next scene, we see Rey shooting a blaster, which is something we actually haven't seen her do. We've only seen her use the staff. I know a bunch of her toys come with a blaster, and it's kind of a weird looking blaster, and it's this exact one. So it's cool that she's, using weapons other than her staff and everything. And she looks kind of pissed in this. She's shooting at someone that she doesn't really like. So whether it's just stormtroopers or whether she sees Kylo Ren or Captain Phasma or something, we really don't know. But it is on the planet, the forest planet that Maz Kanata's castle is at, so that's pretty cool. Then after some quick shots of the Falcon going through some more Jakku wasteland stuff, we see this scene of a control room suddenly blowing up. Now, my theory is that this is the finalizer's hangar bay, and Finn and Poe are escaping in the TIE fighter, and they've just blown up the command center, obviously maybe shut down the shield to get out or something. And my reasoning for this is that, one, if you look on the left or right, up in one of the windows, you can actually see TIE fighters on racks. So obviously like stored in like a hangar. And the next one is down in the bottom, you actually see one of the mouse droids, which is an Imperial issue droid that goes around Imperial ships and Death Stars and stuff like that. So yeah, this is definitely something to do with their escape plan from the finalizer. So yeah, this scene gives us our first look at Leia Organa, and I guess her husband Han Solo. We don't really know if they're husband and and wife. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think if they are, if they aren't. I know some rumors are saying they aren't, and Han and her have sort of like grown apart and sort of kind of despise each other a little bit more, kind of like how they did at the start of Empire Strikes Back. But I don't know, I'd like to see them together again. I think they work well together and are a good couple. And the end of Return of the Jedi sort of made it seem like they are a thing, you know? So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Another interesting thing is the character in the background that you see sort of looking over at them is one of the actors. I can't remember his name. I think it's like Ken Lung. He's portraying sort of like a rebel or a resistance general sort of commander sort of guy. So that's really cool. Pretty sure it's him, mainly because the costume matches up with the quote-unquote leaked photo we saw of him a while back. The pants, the tunic, you can see like the kind of the belt and the insignia on his shirt. They all sort of match the picture that was leaked, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, other than that, pretty simple scene. She seems to be hugging Han in a sad way. She seems to be crying. Maybe she hasn't seen him for a while, or maybe, you know, Chewie's not there, or though it is like a small like shot scene, so maybe he's just out of frame or something. We don't really know what's going on, but it's fun to speculate. And here we have the money shot of the trailer, which is Finn activating Luke Anakin's lightsaber and seemingly getting into a duel with Kylo Ren. What's really cool to notice about this scene is that Kylo Ren isn't actually wearing his helmet or hood, and if you just look, you can just see Adam Driver, the side of Adam Driver's face and everything. So he obviously doesn't have his hood or helmet on in this scene, which is interesting because when we saw this scene where he activated the lightsaber for the first time in the first ever teaser, he had his hood on and everything, so maybe that gets damaged or something, or he just pulls it off to like fight a little bit more easier or something. And I gotta say, I love that crossguard lightsaber. It looks so cool, and I like all the effects they're doing with it, with like the bits of discharged plasma coming off it when he swings it and everything. Looks so cool. And it also looks like that Finn is kind of got himself in a sticky situation. He doesn't particularly know what to do, and it's going to be interesting to see how this fight actually ends, like whether Rey comes and saves him, or you know, Han or Luke or someone. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens and how this fight comes about, because this will be our first lightsaber battle of this new trilogy probably, and it's pretty interesting to see like how it's choreographed and whether it's more like the original trilogy, how they were actually like swords and they fought, you know, two-handed, which Adam Driver seems to be swinging that with one hand, whereas Finn seems to have it with two hands, which you should really hold a sword with two hands. Or it's going to be like the prequels where it's all fancy, you know, flips and, you know, one-handed, you know, pirouettes and stuff like that. So I'm really interested to see how they handled the choreography of the lightsaber fights. But yeah, that's about it for this trailer. It was a really, really good trailer, and a lot of people seem to like it. It's currently got some insane amount, like 120 million hits or something, and you know, people are buying tickets, you know, left, right, and center. I know the cinema I'm going to had to add 4 more midnight screenings, so it's going to be a popular movie this Christmas. I'm really looking forward to it, and let us know in the comments if you're looking forward to it, what you like, what you don't like, and also if you liked this video, what more do you want us to do on Star Wars related stuff. And we're going to try and keep it more with the new canon to not alienate people who are new into the Star Wars universe, and, you know, mention stuff about the legends. But yeah, if you want us to do a video on something, just let us know in the comments section.